They say you should never get a job just for the money. And to that I say, why exactly should I get a job? So that I can go in, work a 9 to 5 for a corporate overlord pushing a button, all in the hopes that I can retire by the time I'm 65 into the life I want? The thing is, folks, in the 3 decades I've been on this planet, I've realized something. And it's the fact that they say a lot of things. And a lot of what they say is just utter BS. Sure, money into itself does not equal happiness. Agreed. However, more money buys you back more time. In that time, you can spend for yourself. You can spend with your spouse, with your kids, with your parents, with your dogs, with your friends. More time that you get to dedicate to living your life, and that absolutely equals more happiness. So join me today as I reveal for you my top 6 jobs that are all gonna help you get the bag, aka make over $100,000. These are all jobs that I have at one point either aspired to have or have worked myself. And the way we're gonna actually work through this list is just gonna go chronological order, and we're gonna start from my aspirations in high school to my very latest corporate career. And if you're new here, hi, I'm John of John's Finance Tips. And on this channel, I wanna help you up your money knowledge. So let's jump into it. Job 1, a software engineer. It's kind of funny thinking about it now, but growing up, I never had any job aspirations. Not that I wasn't motivated, but I just kind of naively assumed, okay, I go to high school, I go to college, I get a job, and life is accomplished. But I never thought more deeply about what job I wanted to do. And that would be a bit of a problem when I started applying for colleges my fall semester of senior year in high school. Because in college applications, they ask you, what's your major? I still remember for 2 schools, University of Connecticut and University of Maryland, I applied into the School of Engineering with a computer science major. 2 other schools, it was Northeastern and UMass Amherst, I applied for the School of Business with a general business major. Literally, it was a flip of a coin. I was like, well, this seems interesting, that seems interesting, we'll see how it goes. Ultimately, I ended up going to University of Connecticut. And by default, because I applied to be a computer science major, I was a computer science major. And that lasted for all of 1 day. Now, had I stuck through it, my job prospects would have been amazing, because here's how much software engineers can make. Salary. The median salary for a software engineer is about $233,000. And in the top percentile, you can be looking at total comp packages of around $425,000. And typically, it looks like these are broken down into base pay, stock compensation, and bonuses. And in my research and talking to friends who are software engineers, the majority of that $233,000 median package would come from base pay. So typically you might see something in the range of like 170 to 180,000 as the base pay, and then you're gonna be given a portion that are stock options, and then the remainder would be a bonus, whether it's a performance bonus, year-end bonus, sign-on bonus. And the source for this data is from levels.fyi. This seems to be the de facto place that software engineers go to either report their salary, check on salary, and so forth. Now I'm gonna put a huge caveat on this, and that's the fact that it's very difficult to capture salary for all software engineers because it varies so much. Whether you're at a massive company, say a Facebook, Amazon, or Netflix, whether you're at a startup, whether you're a year in, 5 years in, 10 years in as a principal. But generally though, software engineers get the bag. So what exactly does a software engineer do? According to the internet,
a software engineer is an IT professional who designs, develops, and maintains computer software at a company. They use their creativity and technical skills and apply the principles of software engineering to help solve new and ongoing problems for an organization.
Yeah, that's a lot of words. What I interpret it as, and what I hear from friends who actually work as software engineers or rather developers, is you just spend time coding widgets, whether for customers or for internal tools. And more often than not, you're spending time fixing problems with existing code. Now, another caveat I wanna throw out there is when I talk about a software engineer, I'm talking about somebody who has the ability to work whether front end or back end. This is known as a full stack developer. Front end development, you can think of people who are maybe working on websites. Back-end development, you can think of people who are in the works working on the databases and all the plumbing, connecting everything. And a full stack developer can work both front-end and back-end. Requirements: a 4-year college degree. Though some will say it's not mandatory for every place, I would say if you wanna make your life easier, get a 4-year college degree, you'll get more looks. Now, my recommendations for getting started: make your life easy, get a computer science degree. That's just gonna put you on the path to actually landing that first job. The other thing you wanna look for aggressively in your undergrad career is intern opportunities, to actually go and intern and see, hey, is this a profession I would like? Or just get your foot in the door so when it comes time for hiring, you've got someone that you might be able to tap into. Now, there's another cohort of folks who might be actually wanting to pivot into a software engineering career, and those are people who actually go through these boot camps, intensive multi-month boot camps that are just gonna teach you how to code, and then you can get a job without necessarily having, say, a computer science background. That's absolutely viable. Just make sure you do your due diligence when it comes to some of these coding academies. Job number 2, a doctor. So after one day as a computer science major at UConn, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. You see, I concurrently applied to be a computer science major as I was just starting to take a computer science class in high school. And after I took that computer science semester in high school, I realized I didn't want to do computer science. But it was already too late. I was already accepted into UConn for a computer science major. So I had to swap out the very first day of orientation. And I kid you not, folks, on that day one of orientation through the School of Engineering, when I told them I didn't want to be a computer science major, they just looked at me and said, okay, what do you want to be? To which I replied, what's popular here? Which is like an insane thing to think about, as if I just like walked into a little small town diner and just go, hey, what's the daily special? And so they kind of looked at me and just went, well, psychology is our most popular major. And then I said, sure, sign me up for that one. Now, in my defense, the reason I was so nonchalant about a major was because leading up to day one freshman year at UConn, I had decided that I was gonna be a doctor, and I kind of knew that in terms of majors, it didn't actually matter. I just needed to get into med school. Now, I wanna caveat this with being a doctor is very wide. You have a lot of different specialties. I was just thinking a general primary care physician, right? You just go in and see them, say, hey doc, I'm sick, that type of doctor. Or in a hospital, they would be known as internal medicine doctors. The median salary is about $244,000 a year. And in the top 90th percentile, they could make upwards of $447,000 a year. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory, but just in case, as a doctor, you are going to help treat patients. If they are sick, you are going to give them a treatment plan to help them feel better. And if you really go above and beyond, you practice preventative care in which you actually prevent them from getting sick in the first place. But after speaking with friends who are now practicing doctors, who are internal medicine doctors or primary care doctors, you realize that the treating patient part is like the ideal way to be a doctor, but then there's all the stuff in the background, which takes up a lot of time. Things like dealing with office politics, or actually even crazier is dealing with insurance, literally trying to convince insurance that, hey, you should cover this treatment for this patient because it's very important. And the insurance is like, no, I don't know, oh, you need to send a prior auth. Like that stuff apparently takes up a lot of time versus the actual treating of the patients. And then if you work in a hospital, you get the privilege of handling hospital KPIs that might not actually be aligned with, again, patient quality of care. But if that's something you feel like you can handle, then for sure, here are the requirements to being a doctor. First, you're gonna need a 4-year undergraduate degree. Then you're gonna go to medical school for another 4 years. And after medical school, you're probably gonna do another year or two of a residency, and after which you are now gonna be a fully practicing doctor. And here are some of my tips to getting started. For one, you need to crush your academics. No and ifs or buts about it. You just have to kill it through and through. And here's a fun fact. Pre-med is just like a coursework. It's not a major. It always bothers me in movies or in real life when people are like, I'm a pre-med major. No, you're not a pre-med major. Pre-med is just some requirements of these are the classes that medical schools want to see, but it's not a major. Sorry, anyway, that's just me, that's just me. You're also gonna have to crush your MCATs. Think of it as SATs or ACTs, but it's for med school. Next up, make sure that you're volunteering and shadowing doctors. You're shadowing doctors to figure out, hey, is this something I wanna do? But also showing med schools that you're committed. You're then also volunteering to show med schools that you're committed. And if you're in college, get into a research laboratory doing something. I don't care what, but get into a research lab doing something and try to get your name published on a research article. You're not gonna be first name, but contribute into that lab. Again, it shows med schools, I'm committed. And if there are any folks out there that are in med school or any doctors out there, I'm sure I'm missing a whole ton of other things you could be doing, but at a high level, you can kind of see, you gotta do a lot to show med schools, I'm committed. Job number 3, a pharmacist. So after my first 2 years at UConn, I realized that I didn't think I was gonna cut it in med school. See, I was working my ass off and I was doing well. Organic chemistry, biochemistry, anatomy and physiology. But what I also realized, there were kids in those classes who didn't have to work nearly as hard and they just got it. And if there's one thing I want you to know about me, it's the fact that I don't wanna make my life any harder than I have to make it. If I'm already cranking at this level for undergrad, and there is still med school left, and then there is still residency to compete for, yeah, that just wasn't gonna be it for me. So after 2 years on a path to double majoring in biology and psychology, I went to my parents and said, I don't wanna go to med school anymore. I don't wanna be a doctor. To which they said, great, so you must be going to pharmacy school now. And you're probably thinking, why did my parents just assumptively think I'm going to pharmacy school? Well, that's because when I first started out in college, when I swapped from computer science to psychology and told them I wanted to be a doctor, I said, hey, if I don't get into med school for whatever crazy reason, I'll just go to pharmacy school. Never thinking that I would actually have to use my backup plan. salary for a pharmacist. And I'm only gonna be talking about it through the lens of a retail pharmacist, someone working at CVS or Walgreens. You also have pharmacists who work at hospitals, and you also have people who graduate pharmacy school and end up working for a pharma company. But for the sake of the video, we're gonna focus on where most pharmacists end up, which is working at a CVS or a Walgreens. So the median salary is about $127,000 a year. In the top percentile, you're looking at a salary of $140,000 a year. So what exactly does a pharmacist that works at CVS or Walgreens do? At a very high level, what they do is make sure that the medication that's filled is exactly what the medication should be. So typically it's pharmacy technicians that fill medications, and the pharmacist verifies these pills are correct, the count's correct. In addition, they want to verify that whatever the doctor is sending over as a prescription makes sense as a prescription, because you'd be surprised at how many doctors just write the wrong thing and just send it off to the pharmacy. In addition, they want to make sure there's no drug-drug interactions for a patient, there's no allergies, all of that stuff they're verifying. Ideally, that's what pharmacy schools and CVS and Walgreens want you to think pharmacists do, and they do that. But then there's the BS side of the house, which is dealing with insurance coverage. Patient comes in, insurance doesn't cover the medication, they're screaming at the pharmacist is like, hey, I gotta get a prior auth, let me go ahead and handle it with your doctor, with your insurance. So there's a lot of insurance fights. The other thing that also happens is KPIs. When you work for a CVS and a Walgreens, you are KPI'd up the wazoo. Here's an example. Let's say you go to CVS, you go to the pharmacy, you buy some stuff, you get your medication, you get a receipt, there's a survey. You fill out the survey. You say, you know what, I had a poor experience, 3 out of 5. Well, guess what? If you're the only person that filled out the survey, that still gets KPI'd for the month against the pharmacist and the pharmacy, and they can get dinged for that. And the craziest part is, even if it's one survey, one person had a bad experience, that could ruin the entire month for that particular pharmacy. And you're probably thinking, wait, one survey, but how can I control that? You can't. Now onto requirements. You'll need a 4-year undergraduate degree. Then you'll do another 2 years in pharmacy school getting a PharmD, and then an optional 1-year fellowship or a residency depending on where you go. But if you go retail, you can just go straight into retail after pharmacy school. Now, my general tips on getting started. Very similar to med school where you had a pre-med coursework. In going to pharmacy school, you have a pre-pharmacy coursework. So get that coursework done. And you're gonna be after 2 years in pharmacy school, I decided to pull the plug. The thing is, I never wanted to go to pharmacy school. It was always a backup option. And so when I told my parents, hey, I didn't want to be a doctor, they said go to pharmacy school, but I didn't know what else to do. So I went. But really, I spotted some issues upon day 1 in pharmacy school. The first thing was, in 2014, the Bureau of Labor Statistics published a report that basically said in the next 10 years, the growth of jobs for pharmacists was below the rest of healthcare. Basically, there were gonna be too many pharmacists, not enough jobs. Supply, demand. And for the record, I was actually correct in that assumption, because in 2018 or 2019, the Bureau of Labor Statistics basically said pharmacist jobs are gonna grow at a pace of 0%. Basically, market saturation. The second issue for me was the pay. If you work in retail pharmacy at CVS or Walgreens, you're not gonna make more than $140,000, $150,000 in like the 40 plus years you'll work as a pharmacist. And for me, I'd always benchmarked my success to the salary of a doctor, $250,000 plus. Now, I know, looking back, that's a naive thing to think, but listen, I was 20 years old at the time, all right? I thought, hey, I need to be either doing that or I'm not successful. And so I'm like, all right, I need to be making more. And the third issue was the fact that my last 2 years in pharmacy school would have been those graduate years, would have been an additional $100,000 in student debt, to which I thought, well, I'm gonna take all this debt, but I'm not actually making what I wanna make or do what I wanna do. Does it actually make sense? So after spending 6 years at the University of Connecticut, and with 3 Bachelor's of Sciences degree in hand in biology, psychology, and pharmaceutical sciences, I said, finally, it's time to peace out, and got my first big boy job as a pharmaceutical sales rep for Eli Lilly. Salary. Now I'm gonna speak from my point of view while I was at Eli Lilly. Of course, it's gonna vary based on company, but Lilly is a huge player. In most pharma companies you wanna apply to and that are worth working for, you wanna be big players. Think Novo, think Boehringer Ingelheim, think GSK. And so the median salary was $190,000. The top percentile were probably well pushing over $280,000. The one thing that I want to note though is, as a pharma sales rep, specifically at Lilly, it was a base plus bonus. So it wasn't a commission, but it was like a bonus. So for the example of the $190,000 median salary, that base would have been maybe $115,000 or $120,000 for the rep, and the rest would have been a performance bonus. So what exactly does a pharmaceutical sales rep do? Well, legally, you're selling drugs, which sounds so weird to say, but that's truly what it is. You're going in there to influence doctors, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants to write for the medication that you are compensated to quote unquote sell. Now, granted though, I will say I had really good medications. They were all anti-diabetes medications. Things like Tradjenta, Jardiance, Trulicity. By the way, Trulicity as a GLP-1 receptor agonist is kind of similar to Ozempic, which is that miracle weight loss medication. Back in the day, we actually saw data for Trulicity that basically helped patients lose weight by suppressing appetite. Little did we know that this category drugs that Ozempic is in would now explode, and it's just weight loss miracles. In terms of what you actually do as a pharmaceutical sales rep, depending on your territory, it's a lot of windshield time. You're driving between doctors' offices, you're dropping off samples, you're getting signatures for the samples that you drop off, and you're running lunch and learn. So lunch and learn is basically where you go, you bring in lunch, and you're presenting about the medication, you're talking about insurance coverage, you're figuring out, hey, how can you help a doctor help a patient? Requirements to get hired as a pharmaceutical sales rep, I would say typically you're gonna need a 4-year undergraduate degree. My pro tips for people who wanna get started. Number 1, it helps if you have an advanced degree. Now, Lilly actually used to only hire pharmacists, and so you could have kind of a higher level conversation with doctors. And so if you have an advanced degree, if you are a nurse, if you are previously a pharmacist, that's definitely gonna give you a leg up, though it's absolutely not a requirement whatsoever. In addition, it definitely helps if you have shadowed or have some sort of experience that you can speak to as to, hey, why do you want to be a pharmaceutical sales rep? The other pro tip is a lot of companies like to hire early talent. So if you're a handful of years out of college, just know that you probably have a leg up in trying to get your foot in the door versus someone who's, maybe had a career and now they want to pivot. Well, when you're making a pivot, you have to really quote unquote sell yourself why you want to be in a pharma sales role. If you've never done it, if you are coming from marketing or a communications type of background. So know that, look for early talent programs, but most of the major companies have them. And my number 1 pro tip, really just try to find a good territory. What I mean by that is, in the pharmaceutical sales rep world, I'm giving you a bit of a tea here, you're gonna have the most success if your medication is covered by insurance at the tier 1 level. Because if insurance does not cover your medication, a doctor is not gonna write it. Pure and simple. They're not gonna write a medication that doesn't get covered because then the patient's like, hey, you wrote me medication, but I can't pick it up because insurance doesn't cover it. And to find a medication that's well covered, you wanna actually find medications that are the category leaders. So if you're looking at a company and they're like, hey, this is a diabetes portfolio, okay, what are some of the best medications on the marketplace to treat diabetes? Am I gonna be selling those for the right company? And if it's not the case, and if you have the opportunity, I probably wouldn't go that way. Again, folks, it goes back to my whole, I wanna make my life easy. And to make your life easy in the pharmaceutical sales space, you wanna find medication with really good insurance coverage. Software sales, specifically as an enterprise account executive. So after 2 years working as a pharmaceutical sales rep, I actually really did enjoy the job, but what I realized was there's kind of a pay ceiling in the sense that, hey, if I'm crushing it, absolutely killing it, I only get a bonus that's this amount. And at the time, I think it was maybe like a $28,000 or $30,000 bonus. But if I did more than that, you're not really going that much higher above it. And so I was like, hey, if I'm gonna be selling, I wanna be compensated for it. B2B sales, which is business to business sales, where you're paid out on a commission that's typically uncapped. And so eventually I landed at SAP. SAP is a massive, in fact, I think it's one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world. So the median salary for an enterprise account executive is typically around $300,000, and those in the top percentile are probably pushing packages well over $450,000. And how salary structure works is you have a base plus your commission, but again, the commission is uncapped. And so a $300,000 median salary would have a base of about $150,000 and a commission of $150,000. However, if you sell more than your quota, you can exceed that. In fact, I know someone who was in their late 20s working as an enterprise account executive, they had a $700,000 year. Insane, like absolutely mind-blowing numbers. So what exactly does an enterprise account executive do? A couple things. As an enterprise account executive, you're typically pretty senior and you're selling to very large accounts. I had a customer base that typically had a revenue band of over $1 billion. But really what you're doing is you're going in there and you're selling software. You are listening to customer problems, and if you can find a big enough of a business problem that someone has, and you can either help them make more money, save some money, or differentiate against your competitors with your products, well, there's a fat commission check waiting for you at the end of it. The job involves a fair amount of travel, depending on what type of territory you have, a fair amount of presentations, client dinners, and then also all the stuff on the back end of actually running a sales cycle, coordinating your internal teams, making sure they're aligned to key stakeholders on the customer side. But overall, though, I'd say it's a pretty fun job. Requirements. A 4-year undergraduate degree. I have been seeing some people kind of pivot into a tech sales role using a boot camp. And that's valid for sure, but for the most part though, you are gonna need a 4-year undergraduate degree. My pro tips for you on how you can get started. If you want to end up as an enterprise account executive making $300,000 a year, you'll have to start at the bottom. The very bottom is called being a sales development or business development representative. After being successful there, you're then going to become an AE for, say, small or medium businesses. You'll do that for 2 to 3 years selling to small companies. After showing success there, you can move into mid-market, selling to slightly larger companies with more pay. And eventually, after 2 or 3 years there, you can move into an enterprise account executive role where you're selling to large companies with a much larger pay package. As far as getting your foot in the door, pretty straightforward. SDR, BDR, entry level, they hire straight out of college. They hire for people who are pivoting careers. Afterwards though, it's gonna be on you. Can you hit numbers and close deals and keep progressing to make it to the enterprise account executive level? That's typically an 8 to 10 year journey. There's a pro tip though. A lot of companies, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, a lot of them have early talent development programs where they identify early talent maybe 2-3 years after a corporate job, have high potential to succeed as an account executive, and you basically are going to be able to get hired directly into an account executive role. Referrals help a ton. If you're trying to apply to be an SDR, BDR, you're getting nowhere, look for people on LinkedIn who are the SDR or BDR managers and send them a DM. I swear to you, if you're going to be a salesperson, you got to be comfortable doing that. Shoot them a DM and say, hey, I'm interested, I want to apply, I haven't heard back, I've applied. Whatever the case may be, make sure you're selling for yourself. And one final closing comment. When it comes to enterprise software sales or software sales in general, it's not so much a sell me this pen type of situation. Many people think, oh, sales, used car salesman. No. Software sales, B2B sales, it's very relationship based. In addition, it's your ability to basically identify a customer problem, match your solution to the problem, and then you make money. Like, yes, it's very simplified, but it's not all right, I'm gonna sit you down and sell you this pen and sign here. Because trust me, you're not gonna be able to get one person across the aisle to sign for $1 million contract. You need to make sure everyone up and down their organization is bought in, and then you can get that transaction pushed through. Job number 6, content creator, or influencer, or YouTuber, or TikToker. So after 5 years in software sales, I really thought this was it for me. I'm gonna sell a bunch of software, buy a bunch of real estate, retire early. Because that's what it's always been for me. Financial independence, retire early. And in comes this whole content creation thing. Something that I don't think I could have ever imagined if we go all the way back to high school. I could have never at that point said, hey, I want to grow up and make videos online, where I could even make enough money to sustain myself. But it's 2024 and here we are. Now I know this video is getting very, very long, and we can make a separate video if you guys are interested where I kind of break down all of my various income sources as a content creator. But as a general remark for people who are interested in content creation, I would say it doesn't take a huge audience to start monetizing. It's something to me that I was so surprised by when I got my very first brand deal. At the time I had 70,000 followers on TikTok, and I was reached out for a brand deal for about $1,500, which to me, I was like, this is insane. Like, oh my God, someone's paying me $1,500 to make a post on TikTok. And the nice thing about working as a content creator, working for yourself is, quote unquote, the income side, there isn't really much of a limit. The limit is kind of on you. The limit is on how much work you're gonna put in and how much you're gonna optimize your business for revenue. I mean, I know creators who are doing well over 500,000 a year, well over $1 million a year. Anyway, I won't hold you guys here any longer. These were my top 6 jobs to make over $100,000 a year. If you want to talk more specifically about being a pharmacist or pharma sales or tech sales or content creator, feel free to let me know as well. Maybe we can do a follow-up series for more deeper dive breakdowns. Until then though, I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.